Cool bananas, this is recording. Let me get out my little spotlight before we begin. There it is, fantastic. Okay, welcome to the webinar. This webinar is on PTE writing. This is the second part. Last week we looked at how to write the introduction and I showed you a beautiful formula that you can use to write a 3-sentence introduction that will hit the target every time. In this webinar, we're following on from the introduction and we're going to look at paragraphs 1 and 2. Okay, I'm going to show you how to write a beautiful, flowing, coherent, excellent essay, which will give you a high score. And that's all that matters in the end. That's all that matters. Not that you can, that's all that matters. Right, structure. Let's just quickly look at what we did last week. So last week we looked at the introduction, okay? I just want to recap. If you weren't here last week, you can upgrade your account and watch the webinar from last week. But if you don't, well, here's a little recap. So we looked at the introduction and we looked at a formula which included writing one sentence that was a background statement to the question prompt. So, for example, if the question prompt was about mobile phones being distracting, we talked about a background, very broad statement about mobile phones and how they're increasing. Then the second sentence of your introduction was where you got the question prompt and you rewrote it in your own words. Okay? Third sentence, and this is the critical one that we're going to look at tonight because this leads on to your paragraphs. This is the gateway to your paragraphs. This tells the reader what you will tell them. This essay will. Let's have a little look at an example. So here was the question prompt from last week. It said, vegetarianism is a more ethical practice than eating meat. Discuss the extent to which you agree or disagree with this statement. So what we did, let me just move me. What we did is we wrote an introduction that looked like this, and rather than read it all, let's just go through it sentence by sentence. So we had a background statement that said, vegetarianism has become increasingly popular in recent times, very broad. Then what we did is we drilled down a little bit further and we said, people often choose to become vegetarian because it is considered to be more ethical than being a meat eater. What we've done here is we have rewritten this statement in our own words. Then we went one step further and we told the reader what we will tell them. This essay will discuss the reasons why vegetarianism is in fact a much more ethical eating practice when compared to eating meat. That's how we write the introduction. In this webinar live class, we're going to look at these two paragraphs because your essay should have an introduction, it should have an argument 1, argument 2, and a conclusion. So let's focus on these two paragraphs. Absolutely critical. The whole thing's critical. The whole thing's critical. Right. Any early questions before I start? Yes, Maral, I can see your questions there. Anyone have any questions, or do you want me to keep going so you can get back to your Sunday? Rohit, please ask your question in the Q&A if you have a question. Please ask your question in the Q&A. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. No questions. I'm going to continue. Well, Hasham. Hasham says, hi Jay, where can I get the previous webinar? Uh-oh, you need to upgrade. Harpreet says, keep going. Thank you, Harpreet. Right, so we looked at a formula for the introduction, which was beautiful and simple and hits the nail on the head. In this one, we're going to look at your argument 1, your argument 2, a formula for your next 2 paragraphs. As I said, the introduction is background statement, rewrite the question, this sentence will. This third sentence dictates what your sentence will be about. This is such a critical sentence, okay? This essay will discuss the reasons why vegetarianism is in fact a much more ethical eating practice when compared to eating meat. This sets the direction for your next 2 paragraphs. Let's have a look. And this is where I need your help. I need your help, okay? So we've written the introduction. We've written the introduction, and the final sentence says, this essay will discuss the reasons why vegetarianism is in fact a much more ethical eating practice when compared to eating meat. Please type into the Q&A one reason why vegetarianism is in fact a more ethical eating practice compared to eating meat. Even if you don't believe it, I don't care. I eat meat, but for the sake of this essay, please write one reason why vegetarianism is more ethical. Yes, 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 yes. I thought everybody would say that. You don't want to kill the little puppies and the kittens and the horses. Hang on, we don't eat those, do we? Oh, more healthy. Interesting. Reduce greenhouse gas effects. Oh, energy efficiency. Oh, eating meat. Oh, good. I'm glad you guys have some critical thinking skills. That's excellent. World becomes more peaceful, says Mandeep Singh. Oh, that's very interesting. Good. Thought so. I thought so. Most people are talking about animals, and I think that's probably the most apparent reason why vegetarianism is more ethical. So this is what I've written. This is the beginning of my argument. This leads from this to my next paragraph. It says vegetarianism is more ethical than eating meat because it does not harm animals. Okay. Now, what did I write in my introduction? The third sentence said, this essay will discuss the reasons why vegetarianism is in fact a much more ethical eating practice. Vegetarianism is more ethical than eating meat because it does not harm animals. You can see that the introduction has led to the first sentence of the paragraph beautifully. Right, what's another argument? What's another argument? Okay, so we said killing animals. Ganesh has said vegetables have more nutrients than meat. Is that anything to do with ethics? No, no, that's nutrition. That's different. Digestion? No, that's nothing to do with ethics. That's physiology. We want to talk about ethics. Make sure your introduction, your paragraphs talk about the same thing. You can't talk about ethics and then talk about nutrition. You can't talk about ethics and then talk about human digestion. You need to talk about ethics and then talk about ethics and then talk about ethics, right? So what else have we got here? Okay, Shamal Pereira says the meat industry uses a lot of water. Fine, that's, using water could be an ethical problem because it means some people might not get water. Okay, what's another one apart from the animals? An ethical one, apart from killing animals. Yes, Jagadish. Well done. Jagadish says, nature, it's better for the environment. Right. Caroline says it affects the ecosystem. Shamal says it produces a lot of greenhouse gases. Yes, good. And these are ethical questions. We're not talking about nutrition. We're not talking about religion. We're not talking about physiology. We're sticking to ethics. And this is a major thing to remember, that your introduction talks about ethics. The question prompt talks about ethics. You need to talk about ethics. Cool, let's have a look. So here's what I wrote for the first sentence of my second paragraph says, vegetarianism is also much more ethical than eating meat because its impact on the environment is far less. There's an ethical implication there with killing animals. There's an ethical implication with disturbing the environment. Cool. So this is how your essay should flow from the introduction, where you talk about vegetarianism is much more ethical than eating meat, okay? So you've started here. Then you needed to flow into vegetarian is better for animals, okay? More ethical for animals. And then your argument two, it's better for the environment. And you can see here in my introduction, I've told the reader that this essay will discuss the reasons why vegetarianism is more ethical. Argument one, it's better for animals. Argument two, it's better for the environment. This flows from beginning to end, okay? You can see a flow. Now, that's logical, that's good, that's what we want. If I do something like this, if I write in my introduction, vegetarianism is much less ethical than eating meat, and then talk about how vegetarian is better for animals and better for the environment, that's illogical, and that's not a good idea. Or if in my introduction, I talk about how vegetarianism is much more ethical, and then I talk about how it's worse for animals and worse for the environment, that's illogical. That is not flowing, okay? We need to make our introduction flow to our first paragraph, flow to our second paragraph, and then flow to our conclusion. Again, it's all about this sentence here, this essay will sentence. What will it do? Because if you tell the reader that you will talk about how vegetarianism is ethical, you have to continue that line of argument. Simple as that. And the computer knows, the computer will see inconsistencies, okay? Cool. Right, what am I doing now? Yes, okay. Let's talk now. We've learned about flow and structure in your introduction to your 2 paragraphs. Let's now take a closer look at each of those paragraphs. Before we do that, any questions? Mandeep says, great question. How does the PTE computer know it's logical? Aha, great question. The PTE can pick up in your introduction, if you say this essay will discuss why vegetarianism is more ethical, and in your paragraphs you mention something like meat eating is more ethical, there's an inconsistency, and the computer algorithm will assess that and give you a cross and say incoherent, okay? The computer is smart. It's been fed with heaps and heaps of data. It knows what is a logical argument and it knows what is an illogical argument. Rohit asks, can we give both positive and negative? I'll get to that at the end. Same as Logabala Krishnan, I'll answer that at the end. Hasham says, can we disagree with the statement? Yes, you can. I'll get to that at the end. I'll talk about different possible structures. What else have we got? Satish says, how many words should argument 1 and argument 2 contain? Let me show you number of words. Okay, let me show you the structure for each. Don't worry about word count. Worry about following this structure, because if you follow this structure, you will get the word count anyway. I'm going to show you how to write a paragraph sentence by sentence. Right. This is a good paragraph structure. I wrote this before. Okay, so we had our introduction. This is an example paragraph which is very coherent and logical. It says, vegetarianism is more ethical than eating meat because it does not harm animals. Clearly, harming animals causes suffering, which is unethical. For example, millions of chickens are killed each day for human consumption. Vegetarians do not participate in the killing of animals, which is a much more ethical practice than eating meat. This is a great paragraph. It's well structured. It answers the question prompt. It follows on from the introduction, and it makes a single point in detail. How did I do that? Let's have a look. I have here an opening sentence. The opening sentence says, also known as a topic sentence, you might know it as a topic sentence, and the computer looks specifically at your topic sentences, at your opening sentences, because it's the first sentence of the paragraph that opens up the rest of the paragraph. So everything in the paragraph should follow on from this sentence. And if it does, you'll score highly. If the rest of the paragraph diverts from this sentence, you'll score poorly. Simple as that. Opening sentence, it's broad, like this introduction, the first sentence of the introduction. It says, vegetarianism is more ethical than eating meat because it does not harm animals. But it has a purpose. It's now talking about animals. The next sentence, the support sentence, follows on from the opening sentence. It adds information to the opening sentence. Clearly, harming animals causes suffering, which is unethical. Let's look. Vegetarianism is more ethical than eating meat because it does not harm animals. Clearly, harming animals causes suffering, which is unethical. This then leads on to evidence. We need evidence to support this claim. The evidence is, for example, millions of chickens are killed each day for human consumption. Then we need to go to a closing sentence which completes the paragraph. We can't just finish at evidence. We need to add one more sentence that says, vegetarians do not participate in the killing of animals, which is a much more ethical practice than eating meat. What we can see from this paragraph is that it is coherent. The beginning leads, the first sentence leads to the second sentence, which leads to the third sentence, which leads to the fourth sentence, and the fourth sentence actually links back with the first sentence. So we've got a sort of logical, cyclical structure happening here, and that's a good thing. I should mention on e2language.com, we have 55 essay writing videos that will show you in detail how to do this. But let's keep going. Now, before you go, please ask me a question if you are confused, and I will answer it. Let's see. Anonymous viewer says, using a phrase like this essay will discuss sounds like announcing. Is that okay in an academic essay? Yes, it's an excellent phrase for an academic essay. Okay, Logabala Krishnan says, do we have to add points about counter arguments? I'll get to that at the end. Srinivas says, are 2 arguments enough? Yes, you only have to write 200, between 200 and 300. You could write 3, but there's no point. So an introduction paragraph, argument 1, argument 2, conclusion is sufficient to write 200 words. Jagadish, excellent question, says, can we follow the same structure for various types of essays? Yes. The good thing about the PTE is you're always writing an argumentative essay. So you can use this, you can use the same structure, the same introduction structure, the same paragraph structure for every single question type you get, because they're all ultimately argumentative. That's good. I should mention, I did the IELTS academic test yesterday. I actually woke up at 6:30 in the morning and I went to the city on the train and I paid $330 and I did an IELTS academic test. I sat there for 4 hours and did the whole thing from beginning to end. The essays in the IELTS academic are more difficult than the PTE academic, I can tell you that, because there are different types. In PTE, there's only one and it's argumentative. Mind you, there are other pros and cons about IELTS and PTE. Anyway, okay, sorry, I'm waffling. Okay, Santosh says, hi Jay, the opening sentence and the supporting sentence both give the same meaning. No, the opening sentence is broad. It says, basically says this paragraph will talk about harming of animals. The second sentence, the support sentence, adds information to the first sentence and says harming of animals is unethical. Okay, so the opening sentence is really, really important. And it introduces your paragraph and tells the reader what the paragraph will be about. In fact, the reader should be able to just read the first sentence of your paragraph and go, this paragraph will be about harming animals. Okay, that should be enough information if you write a good opening sentence. Ganesh says, can I assume it's no, always opening sentence, support sentence, evidence, closing. Opening, support, evidence, closing. Use this structure every time. Waham says, how many sentences for argument 1? Opening, support, evidence, closing, 4. You may include another one for support sentence, but you don't need to. Aaron Mag says, how can we think quickly and follow this pattern? Well, if you practice and you have this structure in your mind, it will in fact make your life easier in the actual exam, because instead of sitting there thinking, what the hell am I going to write? Instead, you say, yes, I know, e2language.com taught me that I write the introduction like this, I write my paragraphs like this, and I write my conclusion like this, bang, done. Mansour, it's the same for the opinion essay. It's the same structure for all of the PTE essays. Any more questions? Okay. Is where can we get the? Okay, I'm going to move on. Cool. I'm sorry if I didn't answer your question. There are hundreds of people in here, literally. Let's move on. Your turn. You might need a pen and paper. If you're on a phone, especially watching this webinar, you don't have time to type on your phone. It takes too long. So grab a pen and paper. I want you now to write a paragraph. Let's have a look. Okay, so we looked at this introduction that said vegetarianism has become increasingly popular in recent times. People often choose to become vegetarian because it is considered to be more ethical than eating being a meat eater. This essay will discuss the reasons why vegetarianism is in fact a much more ethical eating practice when compared to eating meat. We did argument 1, which was harming of animals. I want you to write a full paragraph for argument 2, using the opening sentence, the support sentence where you add information, the evidence where you give an example or you give some data or statistics or a recent study, and then a closing sentence. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to do this. And when you've done it, please type it into the Q&A, okay? And I'm just going to sit here awkwardly for 5 minutes with my stopwatch going. You can write, Ganesh has just asked me, should this paragraph be for or against? Well, what does my introduction say? It says, this essay will discuss the reasons why vegetarianism is in fact a much more ethical eating practice when compared to eating meat. So I'm going to have to keep going with that argument. I can't change it. I have to continue saying that vegetarianism is more ethical. However, I'm onto my second argument. I've talked about hurting animals. Now I'm talking about the environment, for example. Okay, anonymous viewer has written a very well-written paragraph about vegetarianism being good for our body. Is that an ethical argument? Or is that an argument about health? I think it's not quite aligned with ethics. Remember, we're writing about ethics, not health, not religion, not physiology or diet. So make sure your paragraph is about ethics, the ethics of vegetarianism. So please try that again, anonymous viewer. Okay, that's 2 minutes. You can, Surendra, you can use the word ethical again, or you can use a word like moral, but there's a slight difference there. Just use ethical, that's fine. Yes, okay, Prashant, well done. Good. You have not got a closing sentence though. You've got a good opening sentence. You've got good support and some evidence, but no closing. So please write your closing sentence as well. Good. Adedeji Oludayo. Well done. That's a nice one. Rohit, you have not mentioned the environment in your opening sentence. Make sure you mention the topic of your paragraph in the opening sentence. Okay, 3 minutes and 40 seconds. You've got a minute and 15. Okay, Logabala Krishnan. Yes. 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 Logabala Krishnan wins. 10 points. Beautiful paragraph. Well done. Okay, Herman's good. Well done. Harpreet Singh, can you use this essay structure for IELTS as well? You can use the paragraph structure. It's a bit more difficult for IELTS, to be honest. Good, anonymous viewer. Okay, good. Okay, Runika Mathur, well done. Mandeep Singh. Yes. Yes, good. Kevin Tran, well done. Okay, they're all starting to come in now. How interesting. It all took you about five minutes to write that paragraph. Considering you need to write 4 of them and you get 20 minutes in the thing, you guys need to practice so you can do it very quickly. Good. Well done. Well done. I won't have a chance to look at everybody's, but just glancing at them, I'm very happy. Let's just check. Remember that the opening sentence, you must mention the topic of the paragraph. Remember in our argument 1, we talked about harming animals. That was our topic. We said something like vegetarianism is better because it doesn't harm animals. And we talked about harming animals. The whole thing was about killing or harming animals being unethical. The second argument was about the environment, the environmental impact of eating meat. So that's what the paragraph is about. Don't talk about anything else. Make sure you mention the topic in the first sentence and follow through that idea, and that is one idea. Good. I'll show you. I'm sorry if I didn't look at your paragraph. If you are a paid member of e2language.com, you can submit your essays through the website and you will get feedback on them if you have chosen the higher package. Or in fact, you can take a one-on-one tutorial where you meet a teacher like me and we sit down together and I look at your essays and tell you what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. Now, let's look at my argument 2. Let's look at my argument 2. Let's look at it. Opening sentence. Here's mine. I said, vegetarianism is also much more ethical than eating meat because its impact on the environment is far less. My support sentence said, growing vegetables is good for the environment, whereas farming animals impacts the environment. Beef cattle, for instance, destroy topsoil and damage the atmosphere. Closing sentence, vegetarianism is a more ethical practice because it does not harm the environment. Just quickly one more time. Opening sentence, support sentence, evidence, and closing. This is a coherent, beautiful paragraph that leads on from the introduction and follows on from the first paragraph. Thank you very much. Right, and it has logic. We talked about the logic before. So remember that the introduction, the formula is 3 sentences. A background statement, very broad, about vegetarianism. Then you rewrite the question in your own words. Then you say, this essay will. This is the critical sentence because it gives direction to your essay. Then your paragraph should follow this formula: an opening sentence, support sentence, evidence, and a closing sentence, right? That's the formula, that's the structure for your paragraph. Now, few people ask me whether we should agree or disagree, or agree and disagree, etc. Let's have a look. Here's the first one. In the introduction, this essay will agree. In the first argument, you agree. In the second argument, you agree. You may disagree in your introduction. Therefore, you must disagree in your argument 1 and disagree in your argument 2. Or you may do a complex paragraph structure where you say, vegetarianism is ethical, although eating meat is also ethical. Something like that. Or you might say vegetarianism is somewhat ethical, but there are also ethical implications for vegetarians. This is a much more complex essay structure, but you're agreeing and disagreeing. So your argument 1, you might agree. In argument 2, you might disagree, or you might agree and disagree, or disagree and agree, etc. So 3 main types. First one, you agree from beginning to end. Second one, you disagree from beginning to end. The third one, which is a much more complex and nuanced type of essay, you agree and disagree, and your paragraphs will, your first one might agree, your second one might disagree, for example. Now, does this formula really work? Yes, it does. Here's my report card. I got straight 90s when I took the PTE. Kaya, my colleague, got straight 90s when she took the PTE. We both use this formula. How to prepare for the PTE? You need to build your skills, build your vocabulary, grammar. I mean, without vocabulary and grammar, the idea of structuring your essay is, you need structure, but you also need to be able to structure individual sentences. That's what grammar is, and that's what vocabulary does. As I said, on e2language.com, if you upgrade, you get access to 55, I think there are, essay writing videos that teach you how to write a beautiful essay from beginning to end. E2 Pronounce, you also get access to that. Test strategy, well, this is the webinar. Test practice, you can submit essays through e2language.com and get feedback, or you can actually take a tutorial, one-on-one tutorial, and get feedback, live feedback with the teacher. Right. Please think about upgrading. It'll help us, it'll help you, it'll help the world. Now, any questions? Let's move to questions. Mandeep says, what about using complex vocabulary? If you are confident you can use it, don't use words that you don't understand. Better to be simple than to be complex and incorrect. Excellent. Wam Mom has a good question. He or she says, can you explain what written discourse is in the enabling skills? Written discourse means structure. It means that you have, it refers to how you structure your essay, for example. Did you have an introduction, a paragraph 2, and a conclusion? And was your introduction structured accordingly? Did it have a nice flow? Did your paragraphs have topic sentences? That's how you increase written discourse in the PTE, using this structure. Hasham says, can we lie or give false evidence? Hasham, yes. This is not a test of your character. This is a test of your English. If you need to pass the test and lie, for example, I don't know, I'm not a vegetarian, but in my essay, I might talk about why I believe in vegetarianism, etc. But just because it's easier to write, don't worry about telling little lies in your PTE essay. The computer has no soul. It doesn't care. Okay, Garner says, do you think it's better to go for or against an argument? It depends on what the topic is and what you think about the topic. Anonymous viewer says, it's really hard for me to produce ideas for writing. What can I do? Spend a couple of minutes at the beginning brainstorming your ideas. If it says something about vegetarianism, you should have some ideas about that. Vishnu says, can we give data that are not correct? Yes, you can say, for example, a study taken in 1999 revealed that blah, 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 blah. Adedeji says, critical thinking is my issue. What can you do? Like, they're not, the question prompts are not difficult. They're not, you should have some understanding of them. You should have thought about them before. So your ideas don't need to be profound. Your ideas can be quite simple. For example, vegetarianism and ethics, of course, write a paragraph about hurting animals. The second paragraph, you need to think a little bit more, talk about the environment, the impact on the environment. Jagadish says, what about time management? Well, if you go into this PTE with this structure of this essay in your mind, boom, it's much, much faster than sitting there thinking, what am I going to write? Suma says, how many essay questions will be asked? You may get 1 or you may get 2. It depends on your exam. The ideal word count, Mandeep, is between 200 and 300. It doesn't really matter. You just get marked 2 points if you write over 200 and below 300. Okay, cool. All right, I'm going to leave it there. I'm sorry if I didn't answer your questions. I hope this webinar helped you. It really is important to have a structure to take into the exam for writing an essay. Without a structure, you might just write what we call a dog's breakfast, where everything is everywhere. Don't do that. Have a consistent, coherent, logical structure that you take with you. It's not cheating because it's in your brain. In fact, it's the opposite. It's a good thing. You should go into the exam with the structure in your head so you can just start typing and you know exactly what to do. You get the prompt, you write the introduction, you write your paragraph, structure them accordingly. Boom, 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 boom. Right. The next webinar is on Tuesday and it will look at the conclusion and we will conclude the entire essay. We've talked about the introduction, we've now talked about the paragraphs, we'll talk about the conclusion. That will sum up the whole thing. Cool. I hope to see you there. Again, my apologies for not answering all your questions. If you have any questions, email hello@e2language.com and I will bid you farewell. Do think about upgrading. If you haven't upgraded yet, please upgrade. Cool. See you. Let me turn this off. Bye.